Hi everybody, it's the CC and JBT Amateur Hour where production values go to die every single time. And it is Sunday, August.
August.
August?
August.
Ugh. August.
August,
2024. That's CC,
And that's JT.
so to speak. Okay.
Somebody's in a mood this morning.
I'm in a mood this morning. Okay, so it is, what episode is this? I've lost track.
185, I think.
185? I
Something
can just
like
look it
that.
up. And we're off to another roaring start here at the worldwide headquarters, because, yeah, it's 185.
185.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
I hope you all have had a wonderful week, and I hope you have a wonderful week in front of you.
Yes. We've been having some beautiful weather for summer. It cooled down. It was actually 49 degrees when I looked at our window thermometer this morning. So
Yeah.
it may get hot here during the day because I think it's been in the mid to upper 80s still.
But that's not hot, but
No,
still.
not for this time of year. It's actually very nice.
Yeah, so we take it what we can. We're here to talk about writing. You
Yes.
wouldn't know it from this meandering, ambling kind of thing that we're trying to do here, but we're here to talk about writing. We like to talk about writing almost as much as we like to write. In fact, I write when I don't have, so I don't have to do anything else.
That explains a lot.
Yeah. So, and we have fun, and we have
do.
fun sharing our experiences and our lessons learned, and we're always hungry for more experiences and more lessons. So if you have anything that we seem to miss or we could improve on, we'd sure like to hear back from you because, we can only improve with feedback, and feedback makes us better writers, it makes us better people.
And we are in a place where we're not getting a lot of feedback, so
We must be perfect.
we're giving each other feedback, which is fine, but we're kind of within our own little bubble.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's nice to get some outside feedback. But
Yeah, and when you've been married for 42 years, the circles in the Venn diagram are getting closer and closer together to being a perfect circle. So, so whatever you got for us, we'll take it.
one brain cell.
One brain cell. So just want to point out that I think I'm wearing my only football piece of clothing.
Raiders.
Raiders. I read someone somewhere online this morning that somebody said that when Nevada gained a pro football team, the Raiders became their team, which is fine. Hey, it's fine. And but I always rooted for the Raiders because they were always the underdogs. Though I'm not nearly as passionate as I am for the Raiders as I am for
The
Cubs.
We're baseball people.
Yeah. So, but it's getting close to that time of year where grown men will go out in tights and go onto a grass or a plastic field and hit each other really hard, and people will cheer by the millions for them. So here we go. Here's another season of that, and Kappa.
The annual
the annual
competition begins.
Yeah, the annual competition, because Northern Nevadans generally love their Niners. So it's
because San Francisco and Reno are really not that far apart. It's about maybe a 4-hour drive with traffic.
Oh yeah, it's nothing. So
yeah.
So much. Okay, so that was our Sports Center update. So thank you, and
da 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 da.
Oh boy. Okay, we're pretty sad.
There's that brain cell again.
Yeah, we're pretty sad. Our current projects is really there's just no change. You've been working on the Bat book.
Yes, I finished my round of edits on the Bat book, which is coming along. It's going to be shorter textually than some of our other books, but we are including photos, and we'll see how this turns out. This is a bit of a new experience for us, writing something nonfiction together, writing something a little bit memoir style, throwing in a little tidbits of history here and there. So there's going to be a lot for a lot of different interests in this book, but it will be short for anybody who has a short attention span. So we'll see how that goes.
It's an adventure. It's a new adventure about our adventures.
Yes.
Because just very quickly, for those of you that are just joining us, we did 3 trips this year. We literally We drove half a length, more than half the length of California at one point. And then we did another trip around, across the United States, taking a quick northern jog to Canada, and then came back. And then we drove the rest of the length of California from, went into Canada again because Canada. And
Well, I'll have to say that I preferred the second Canadian trip to the first Canadian trip. The first time around, we just basically, we wanted to go to Canada, but we didn't really plan to do anything there. So we just spent the night because we were going from Lake Superior to Niagara Falls.
Yep.
So we kind of went through Ontario to get there,
Yep.
just to say that we did Canada. But the trip to British Columbia was a trip to British Columbia, and I really enjoyed that.
Yep. So that was kind of fun. So we're putting it all together in a book with pictures. So check it out. As for my projects, I just want to remind folks yet again that this nifty book is available for pre-sale. It'll be out a week from Wednesday.
Oh, that close now.
Yeah, a week from Wednesday. So both the print copy and the e-copies will be available out there. I guess I need to get to work on the Barnes & Noble one, but definitely the Amazon is out there and ready to go. That's the Amazon book, so I need to get going on the Barnes & Noble book. I completely spaced that off.
So you're currently working on the prequels.
Right, I'm working on the prequels to that one.
So what in this universe has you so engaged in writing so much about it?
Well, the three books, the three original books is something I just started writing. I started writing, during, I don't remember if it was during the pandemic or during the lockdown or afterwards, but I just started writing just to give it a try. So this book, as we frequently pointed out, is 4 years in the making. But it just sort of started growing and realized at one point that I had, I was approaching 200,000 words, and that's how it became 3 books.
Right.
So each of these books is about 80,000 words a pop, so they're not a huge lift. And then the prequel is her fault.
Me?
It's your fault. We were looking at covers, and we went to the site that had pre-arranged covers, and you mentioned Sexbot Revolution.
Yes. So I think I've said this before, but just for fun, even if you're not an author, if you're just, you happened along to our podcast, go to pre-made book cover sites and just look at the kind of the filler titles they put in there. There are some really funny ones. Yeah. And for writers like us, you get a funny title, and sometimes that will actually inspire a story idea.
So 60,000 words later and 3 prequels in the making, I'm actually working off that idea, and it's actually coming together, and it's the characters in this one are pretty interesting to me. So that's how it's going. So that's keeping me busy. And for those of you wondering, I did also recently write another book about Nevada, or that takes place in Nevada.
Yes.
And 2 of my favorite Nevadans, actually I should say 4 of my favorite Nevadans, 2 of them finished, were kind enough to do some beta reading on it. So 2 are done and provided excellent feedback. Yeah, 1 of them is in this podcast. The other 2 are working through it, I assume. So I'm hoping that to get that soon, and we're looking at an October, November release for that one. So that's what we're hoping for, and we're shooting for the Bat book around the same time. So
yes.
we're gonna have some interesting times.
We won't be releasing them at the same time. They'll probably be at least a month apart. But there are, as JT said, Serving Salvation releases on September 4th.
Right.
And then in either October or November, one or the other of the Bat book or the other Nevada book will be released. And then I have a book in the works that I'm looking at December, maybe January, hopefully at this point. I still need to finish the draft of that, but we have a production schedule set up. So there should be some releases coming up pretty quickly in a row here in the future. They will be different genres. One of them will be the nonfiction book. So we have a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
If you're not interested in one genre, you might be interested in another one.
Like most, if not all, independent self-published writers, the challenge we always have to deal with is marketing. So, and it's a discouraging lift. And we're not going to talk about that at length here. It's difficult. It's a discouraging lift. So what we're doing to sort of, what I like to consider the Ben and Jerry's move is when we feel down and sad about the lack of the lack of exposure and that our books are getting. We just keep writing more. So
and someday someone may come across one of the books and it may take off, and that may lead to other of the books taking off. You never know. It does take time. The thing is that we've been doing this for a very long time, because both of us have been kind of futzing around, I guess you'd say, with books for most of our adult lives. So 40 something years of writing with very little to show for it, financially or success. We've had success in the fact that we've finished projects. And I'm occasionally reminded of being in the quarrying trenches back in the 80s and 90s, which was a whole different ballgame, and getting just so close and not quite getting there. So it can be very discouraging.
Yeah, but we're going to keep plugging along because obviously we're too dense to learn from our thing. So we're just going to keep going. And besides, what the heck? As you said, lightning may strike in a bottle, and we may hit that home run.
Well, we just need to find our people.
Yep. We need
so
to find
if you are our people, hi.
Hi. Thank you. Thank you. We're not going to talk about our problems though, even though obviously we just did. But we're going to talk about something fun for a change, because obviously, growing up, movies were a part of Cece's in my lives, more than some things.
Large part.
Yeah, because and we did quite a bit of movies. Movies were a great escapism.
Yes.
A good movie, a well put together movie, is priceless, and a well put together movie that comes out of nowhere is a gift. And I'm just going to use a very quick example, though it wasn't the one we were talking about. The Brendan Fraser first version of The Mummy. Was an absolute gift that came out of nowhere when it was released.
Chef's
it was
kiss.
Just everything about it. Everything about it was perfect, and they couldn't recapture that magic when they tried to do the sequels. That's how good it was at that one time. But as I've gotten older, and I'm probably speaking for Cece, we've noticed more about the writing versus the spectacle of movies.
Movies, yes.
For example, we both know that George Lucas is terrible at dialogue. It's just, it cringes, man. It's like when I watch some of those, my fingers just curl, and it's like, but that's not why people go to those movies. They don't go for the Shakespearean effect of Star Wars.
Popcorn movies.
They just go there for the special effects, the loud noises, and
the experience.
Movies.
Yep.
The subject that I proposed for this podcast was books that we've read and movies that we've seen. Were there movies that we've seen that when we read the books, either before or after, were disappointment? We're going to go kind of, a little bit negative. I mean, there were books that were, that captured the movies, and movies that captured the books quite well. And the obvious one is the first Hunger Game movies, because
I didn't read that book, but the movie I enjoyed.
I did both, and it was clear that the author, the writer, whose name
Suzanne Collins?
So yeah, that's it. Suzanne, thank you.
You're
Suzanne
welcome.
Collins clearly had a background in movies, because it translated both ways perfectly.
Yes.
So,
there is a very distinct difference between writing a novel and writing a screenplay.
Yeah. And so whoever, Dan Brown, who wrote the
Da Vinci Code.
The Da Vinci Code, was once asked, I clearly remember this for some reason, but I'm still going to paraphrase. He was asking about how the Da Vinci Code was brought to movies, and he said that movies are a different entertainment experience than books. And for several reasons, and so filmmakers have to make allowances, they have to make changes in order to bring a book to the screen. So there's always going to be a little bit of translation issue.
Right.
And what's also equally important to remember is that a movie is a financial investment. It's a
heavy investment.
It's a big financial investment. It's, like dealing with stocks and bonds. What it is you as an investor who have X amount of money, whether you are representing a company or yourself, and you get this, either piece of paper or email listing the strengths of a movie, and it's always going to be the strengths, I assume. They're never going to do the weaknesses. And so you're going to look at the star power, you're going to look at the writing, you're going to look at the director and things like that. And so you're going to decide whether or not to invest the money. And sometimes, and you want the, the biggest bang for your investment, because you want that, not only your money back, but you want, some of the,
you need to make money on top of that, because the investment includes things like hiring a lot of people. You have all the special effects, you have the writing crew, you have the directing crew, you have the production crew, you have all the backstage crew like the grips. And there is so much infrastructure involved in putting together a movie that it is a very heavy investment, and you want to make sure that you at least make it back enough to cover all those costs.
And we're not even talking about things like CGI and other, other effects. And even if you were to do a straight drama movie without CGI, you're still talking, tens of millions of dollars in today's economy. So so making a movie out of a book is a challenge. But we were going to talk about the ones that we thought, did pretty good. And so what do you think, in your mind, was a book or books that translated well to the screen, in your opinion?
Well, I'm going to go with a somewhat recent, for me at least, series, Lord of the Rings. I think they captured lightning in a bottle with that one. The books were pretty dense, and I had problems getting through them. Not to say they're not good books, but the translation of the story to the screen, I think, was done really well. The movies were also very dense and very long, and people who have watched the director's cut, like all 3 movies, that will take a full day pretty much. That's how much of the detail that they put into the movie. So I think the translation of the page to screen on that one worked really well.
And that's funny that you picked that one, because there are purists and half purists. And you obviously read the books, but there are purists and half purists who are absolutely incensed by the movies.
Right.
And we go back to the saying again: is, well, you're translating a product, you're translating a 2-dimensional book into a 3-dimensional, visual experience, and so there's going to be changes.
And I think the changes they made were good ones, because not everything that's on the page needs to be on screen. There are moments that might be quieter, and they're great to read in a book. But for a movie like that, the quieter moments that they chose to use were for dramatic effect. And there was so much action and danger and darkness going on that the few light moments in there, I think they were really well chosen. So I can understand that, someone read the book and there was a part that really resonated with them, and they were really hoping to see it on screen, and that's why they get incensed about it. But for me, I think they made the right choices to do what they did with the movie.
Yeah, it was excellent, and it was for 3 hour-ish movies.
At least, yeah.
That's a heck of an investment.
That was
for
quite
everybody.
the investment. But they made back their money, because the fans were so rabid about the book series. The book series has been around for, 50 years by that point, I think, by the time the movies came out. They hit at a point in time where people were just crying out for it, because they had done some Lord of the Rings. They did animated version, I think, back in the 1970s. But it hit the right time. It hit the right people. People saw this movie repeatedly. I know my kids and I went to the theater several times, and we did midnight showings and everything, where you get all the special little perks. So it created a whole, it was a pop culture moment where everybody was really invested in these movies. And in that way, they were not only making back their money, they probably made back a lot more than they spent on it. And then, unfortunately, I think they decided to try again, and it didn't go so well.
And that may be the book that you're about to talk about.
Yes.
But let's. But for me,
your choice.
But for my choice for the book that translated well to the movies, and I'm going to cheat a little bit here, because it was written by another screenwriter. But I'm still going to cheat a little bit, and explain that when I was younger, my habit was to go see the movie, then read the book, because I was curious about how close did they get it, and so I did that with with science fiction movies mostly, because I was raised on science fiction. But the book that I read first and then saw the movie years later was The Godfather. And
Oh, yes.
the reason for that I did it in that order was when the book came out, I was too young to see the movie. It was a violent,
It's dark.
R-rated movie. And when I read the book, I was, 13, 14, 15. I was still in junior high. So whatever age that was, I was still in junior high going to high school. So I read at that age. And first of all, we go into a whole thing about age appropriate reading.
Well, okay. Now, as a kid,
Yeah.
you know how easy it is to sneak a book. I did that myself with one of my grandparents' books. And I know for a fact that our kids were reading some things that they probably shouldn't have at young ages. And part of that was because we didn't know. I mean, I saw that these books were meant for young adults, so I figured they were kid appropriate. I hadn't read them myself, and then I found out there was some very problematic themes in them.
Yeah. And we could go off into that tangent for a while, but for those that have read the Godfather and seen the movie, the movie captures the book perfectly. The book is like so.
It's a very thick one.
The book is like so, and of course, being movie, it could not include everything. There's a significant plot line that's cut out. There are a great more many scenes in the Godfather the book than there are the movie that take place in Nevada.
Yes.
In Vegas. And I think Godfather 2 tries to make up for that a little bit by having it starting in Lake Tahoe, or actually on the shores of Lake Tahoe. But I digress. It did well. When I saw the movie that many years later, finally, it's like, hey, this matches my imagination of what Mario Puzo put on the pages. And that's excellent. So and of course he had quite a say in how the movie was put together. So that's also important.
Did Zoetrope do, like, his studio? I think was American Zoetrope.
Yeah,
Did they do the Godfather?
I don't know.
He had a lot of control, I think.
I don't know how much he had over it, but you know what? If he did, he did well.
Yep.
Him and Frank, Francis Ford Coppola.
Frankie.
They worked well together, and they got an excellent cast, so it worked well. So let's talk about the books that we feel didn't translate well and why.
So, as you mentioned, when Peter Jackson tried to recreate The Lord of the Rings with The Hobbit, it did not work that well for me. And I think the reason for that was because they extended out story elements that didn't need to be extended. They were trying to go for the epic nature of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, where I think The Hobbit was more of a character study about Bilbo and even maybe Gollum, and that whole them interacting with the ring, and not necessarily the big adventure that Frodo had. So I think for me, the fact that they tried to go so big with that one didn't quite work out, and they turned it into a trilogy out of a little tiny book. So I think they were adding elements that didn't need to be in that story. Like I said, for the Lord of the Rings trilogy, when they used the quiet moments, I think they used them to great effect. But I think they added a lot of big moments to The Hobbit that didn't need to be there. It should have been a quieter movie. It should have been a more introspective thing, because the whole one ring power thing, corrupting people, that was a big part of the, and with the hobbits, they were a lot like us. We're hobbits. I think they wanted to stay in the Shire. They wanted a quiet life. They weren't really, we are kind of yearning for big adventures sometimes, but I think we prefer to be in our little hobbit holes. And I think that was the whole problem with the Hobbit, was that Bilbo, just his interactions with the dwarves and everything were a little bit more padded than they needed to be. I think it needed to be more about Bilbo.
Yeah, I think you pretty much nailed that. What people, tend not to remember immediately is that when the books were written, the Lord of the Rings, when the Lord of the Rings was written, the world was in, I don't remember the exact timing, but the world had exited already one world war, and may have been in, I don't remember the timing, if it was the second.
It was around Second World War, I think.
And that was the Lord of the Rings. It was its own world war with allies against a singular foe with some of its own allies. And I don't want to take this, side by side too far, because, they are two different events, and clearly I don't want to incorrectly minimize the importance of World War II or the impact or the tragedy. But yeah, you're exactly right. The Hobbit was a one-person study that, that probably was missed by, 90% of the
Right.
world, of that internal world. Whereas, well, The Lord of the Rings, if you were
Was the world.
it was the world.
Yes.
If you were there, you lived it.
Well, and you had the hobbits, and you had the dwarves, and you had the elves, and you had men, or you had, the people of Gondor and the Rohirrim, and you had everybody in the Lord of the Rings that were all involved. And like you said, going at this one singular evil that was Sauron. And then, in the Hobbit, it's more of, there's really, what was the point other than Bilbo's journey?
Yep.
It was a totally different story. But they tried to recreate the Lord of the Rings with the Hobbit, and for me, that did not work.
Yeah, and I don't want to use the phrase "obvious money grab." Okay,
It worked once.
Yeah, it worked one time. Okay, the book that I'm going to pick is kind of strange, and it's going to be The Martian. And I read the book first, and that may have been. And I'm going to go ahead and caveat this: that my image of the hero was different than what appeared on the screen.
Right.
It was different. And I should also caveat this by saying that what could be translated to the screen in terms of science and, events were translated. The two big problems I had, and I'm not going to spoil it, but first of all was the end, which I thought was completely ludicrous and
Contrived.
Yeah. It was just, they should have just, in my opinion, they should have been more to the book. But then we go back to what I said earlier about, this being a financial investment kind of thing. And, when part of the financial investment is sometimes you want a product that lives happily ever after. And it's like, so I had a real problem with the way that the end, which was only discussed in the book, and was completely discarded as ludicrous, but they went ahead and went with it anyway. The other thing that I think killed the movie for me was, and forgive me, Mr. Damon, but it was Mr. Damon, it was Matt Damon.
Right.
Because, as I said, I went into the movie with the vision of the hero, the vision of the hero. And it was a self-depreciating, funny science guy who, despite being an astronaut and being the top of his field, because who he had to be in order to be on the mission in the first place.
Right.
He understood his place in the world when it came to women, and, he was just, but, Matt Damon, who was a superhero.
Jason Bourne.
Yeah, he was a superhero in so many movies, especially and I read the Jason Bourne books, and I could have used those too either way, because the first Jason Bourne book was quite excellent, but it kind of, once you played James Bond, you're always going to be James Bond.
Right.
And once you play Jason Bourne, you're going to be Jason Bourne, and that was not the hero of The Martian.
So, from your description of the main character in The Martian, would you say that that character resonated with you for particular character traits? You kind of saw a little bit of yourself in him.
Oh, of course, but you always want to be able to relate to relate to the person in the book. You always want to relate to the person in the screen.
Right.
I just think that they should have picked somebody who was just a little bit more vulnerable. Even though it's like watching the Titanic, the damn boat's going to sink.
Right.
And if you know anything about the Martian, that this is not a spoiler. You know that he's going to survive. But dang it should have picked somebody that would have made it more believable that he was having honest to God problems and had some vulnerabilities. But by picking Jason Bourne, yeah.
Well, and that is another large part of the success or failure of a movie, I think, is when you're reading the book, you do have a very particular vision in your mind of a character. And we kind of touched on this when we were talking about the podcast yesterday, the Harry Potter books. There was some pushback against Daniel Radcliffe because Harry is supposed to have green eyes like his mother. Daniel Radcliffe had blue eyes, and I believe he may have had issues. He couldn't wear contact lenses. And over the series, people forgot about it completely because he became Harry Potter. And everybody started seeing him, they stopped caring about his eye color because he did such a good job with the character.
Right. And
But that's the point, that if you are reading a book and you describe the characters in great detail, their physical attributes, and then it's turned into a movie and you can't quite find that person, that can really throw somebody out of the movie.
well, using the same example very quickly, and also this goes back to you want your investment to be a successful investment.
Yes.
So what you want is you want to have the absolute, you want the star power up on the screen, which explains why Matt Damon was up there. But using your movie, Alan Rickman, which everybody
Oh, God.
absolutely loves, was
Severus Snape.
Severus Snape was supposed to be the same age as Harry's
True.
parents,
True.
but clearly was old enough to
Older.
be grandparent age.
Yes.
So, but by picking Alan Rickman, you get the best person available to fill the slot. I just don't think Matt Damon was that person.
Well, and I think in your example with Alan Rickman, it was the same thing that happened with Daniel Radcliffe. People were initially upset that he was so much older, but then later on it was like he became Snape, and nobody could see anybody else playing the part.
Yeah.
So that, I think, was the advantage of having a series. It's like in the first movie, maybe people would have been so much thrown out of the story that they wouldn't have cared to see it again. But the characters continued on for so long that they became the characters, even when the people were reading the books. I imagine the later books, since they were coming out as the movies were released, people were starting to read the books and see the characters from the screen. So I think it kind of goes both ways.
Yeah, and a very quick example before we wrap this up, a very quick example is the Avengers, the Marvel character universe, which is funny is because, they had their own distinct identities in the comic books, and then the movies came out. And what happens when a movie comes out, a comic book movie comes out, is the artists for the comic books start to draw the characters in the comic books to look more what they appear on the movie screen. And two examples that I can think of very quickly is Christopher Reeve,
Yes.
and RDJ. Even though he looked amazingly like Tony Stark, wow, what great casting! What a perfect casting!
But his personality also fit.
Yeah, but Tony Stark in the comic books became more and more looking like RDJ, which is fine. And so, that just goes to prove your points.
Yes.
So we ask our listenership, our watchership, our audience, is there a book that you read that disappointed you when it came to the screen, or was there a book that you read that you sort of knocked your socks off? And we're not talking about the ones we've cited, of course, but ones that's your own. And there's a gazillion examples out there.
I can think of so many.
Yeah.
And I mean, over the course of history, going back to the 1930s, thinking of things like Gone with the Wind, which is very controversial these days. But I think I read both. I read the book and saw the movie, and I thought that one was actually cast really well. But again, it's so old at this point. It's almost 100 years old. We're in it's 80-something years old.
It came out in 1939, and my neck just twinged. Oh, my
God.
God.
But that kind of goes to your point. There are so many choices out there for movies and books.
Yeah, so if you have some, we would sure like to hear about them, and you let us know what you think and see if we got the point or we missed the point. We're going to go ahead and start to wrap this up. Any very quick last thoughts?
No, I just think this one is a really fun discussion. I think hopefully if you've listened or watched this, we will love to hear from you, because we love kind of hearing what other people think. You may totally disagree with me on The Hobbit, because I know there are some people who actually think it's better than Lord of the Rings. And, that's fine. I have no problem with that. Just didn't work for me. So
let's converse.
We'd love to hear from you, and, kind of let's keep this discussion going, because we both enjoy talking about books and movies.
Yeah, and let's keep it civil too.
Yes.
Okay, so we're here every week. If you want to check us out, and you want to check out our books, you want to check out more about our social media, you can find that all on our website at www.carsonhume.com. And next week we'll talk about something.
Well, I mean, we're winding down August. We're going to be heading into the fall season.
August 18th. Next week is the last Sunday in August.
And my gosh.
And then we hit into the last 4 months of the year already. So we're
the Burr months.
Okay. I think we pretty much.
Well, we are going into the dark and spooky season, which people absolutely adore. And I will be probably adding to some of the videos I have on my YouTube channel about Edgar Allan Poe over the course of October. I'm going to do a little bit more on Spooktober with Edgar Allan Poe, just to...
And watch the background here, because the background is going to start changing here, because
the haunted house is coming out.
The most wonderful time of the year. Okay. That over there, Cece.
And over there's JT.
Y'all take care of yourselves, and talk back at us and let you know what we think. But until then, thank you. Love y'all. Bye.
Bye-bye.